I'm Nick Diakopoulos. I'm an assistant professor of journalism at the University of Maryland, College Park. We're seeing algorithms being used throughout industry and government and media now for everything from the tax system and checkups to news recommendations, news personalization, search engine rankings, prices that you see online. These are all mediated by algorithms now. And some of these algorithmic systems are actually making decisions that are important and consequential for individuals or the public. And they deserve additional scrutiny from journalists and other people in society. Traditionally, journalists have been about investigating the power structures of society and holding those power structures accountable for their actions. So to the extent that algorithms are a new form of power in society, my argument is that journalists should be heavily involved and invested in holding the algorithms accountable, for how they're used. Algorithmic accountability has to do with investigating algorithms, understanding the biases in those systems, the influences, essentially the power that algorithms have over us, and trying to articulate that in a way that the public can understand them more effectively. Yeah, so recently we published a study on the Washington Post website where we looked at Uber prices and Uber service quality as it relates to different types of demographic characteristics in different neighborhoods of the city. And basically what we did is we used the Uber API to collect data from each of the different neighborhoods of Washington, D.C. over time for a month. And then we looked at the relationship of the service quality to demographic characteristics like race composition, median income, poverty rate, density, population density. And we built a model based on that, and we're looking at the relationship between how long someone waits for a car and the number of people of color in that neighborhood. And so we found a positive relationship between those two things and published that in the Washington Post. There's a few different methods that journalists can employ. One is a really technical, kind of almost engineering approach where you're thinking about reverse engineering the algorithm to try to understand how it's working underneath and try to understand the data that's feeding into it and how that data is being used, and almost running experiments looking at the inputs and outputs of the algorithm to see if you can correlate and understand how the algorithm is transforming those inputs to outputs. Another way that journalists can get involved is actually thinking more critically about algorithms, almost approaching algorithms more as something to critique or criticize. And that could be effectively done by getting, for instance, patents from companies that have filed for intellectual property protection on algorithms, or from other types of transparency information from the government, for instance, and that those documents might kind of provide the threads for a critical approach to these systems. So certainly you need heavy-duty data skills. You've got to be very comfortable collecting data, manipulating it, setting up experiments. So some scientific thinking is helpful because essentially we're treating algorithms as little cells that we're studying. We're poking and prodding them and looking at how they respond. So you need kind of a experimental mindset for setting those up. Oftentimes you need programming in order to write custom analysis scripts of the data that you're collecting, and do other types of data manipulations. So there's a fair amount of technical capabilities that you need in order to do this type of work. So, I'm advocating both for training computational journalists to be able to do that, but also for journalists to collaborate with computer scientists and other, technically savvy types of people to undertake these types of investigations. And I think that's also an effective model.